I found out my wife hired a hitman to kill me, so I paid him more. Someone else paid him even more. It was late at night, and my wife was asleep. With a small table light on, I sat alone downstairs on my laptop, searching. Well, I'll leave that to your imagination. I heard a slight creak from upstairs, but I'm used to those little creaks. This had been my routine for the last several months. Our marriage wasn't always like this, but recently we have been drifting apart. She's become distant, and it's like she's just going through the motions. Sex consists of me lying on top while she stares at the ceiling. We are still a young couple in our early 30s, but unlike our friends who stayed together because they had kids, we enjoy our dinner parties and game nights too much. But now our marriage had become stale, and we were too afraid to be left on the shelf. I finally relieved myself, to put it politely. Like every night before, I went through the ritual of deleting my internet browser history. I had no choice, as my wife often uses my laptop to order stuff. As I went to press delete and cleanse my soul, I noticed a site called Sinister. That's strange, I didn't recall ever visiting that site. I clicked on the link, and it took me to a dark web forum page. And there's no way my wife's been on here. She's the definition of vanilla. Against my better judgment, I decided to read the page, and there was a conversation between two usernames, Gus, the name of our cat, and the other, Haystack. I scrolled through the messages and my eyes widened in shock. My wife had hired a hitman to kill me. I slunk into bed beside her. I laid flat on my back, wide awake. Every time she stirred or turned over, I flinched. Should I leave? Should I call the cops? Why does she want me dead? All these thoughts raced through my mind. The next morning I was shattered. I didn't sleep at all. How could I, after finding out my wife hired a hitman to kill me? We have a routine before work where Alice brews the coffee while I prepare breakfast. Usually porridge and fruit. Yes, we are one of those health freak couples. While we eat breakfast, we rarely converse. Over the years, we've slowly run out of things to say.
What have you got on today?
I stared at her. She never asked me about my day. Why is she asking now? Just a lot of meetings?
Any important?
Why is she probing me? Is she looking to inform the hitman of my whereabouts? Brad and I have a meeting with the board over the merger. Alice quietly left the table. I couldn't concentrate at the board meeting. There's no way my wife, who I exchanged vows with, could have hired a hitman. I was in a nightmare, and I was ready to wake up.
And the timescales.
A round table of suits stared at me. I snapped out of my trance. Yes, the timescales are fine. As I left the board meeting, my business partner Brad caught up to me in the corridor. Brad was a little older and had a speckle of gray in his beard, making him distinguished.
Is everything okay?
Sorry, I couldn't sleep last night. Brad smiled.
Go home, get some rest. You need to be at your best tonight.
Tonight? He looked at me funny.
Yes, our weekly game night. You're hosting!
With everything going on, I had totally forgotten. It was getting late at work. Everyone had left the office floor. I sat anxiously in my cubicle, too afraid to go home. What if the hitman was waiting for me to leave? After all, my wife would have likely informed the hitman of where I worked. A cleaning crew entered the office floor. One guy had a skull tattoo on his arm. Is he here to kill me? I told myself to stop being crazy. I had a game night to host. I entered the office's underground parking garage. The lights switched on as I walked to my car. I heard footsteps from behind and turned sharply. A security attendant politely nodded. I took a deep breath. If that was the hitman, I would already be dead. I would never have seen it coming. On my journey home, I kept glancing in my rear view. An SUV was keeping its distance. Up ahead, the stoplight turned red and I was forced to slow down. The SUV pulled up beside me at the lights. I looked across but couldn't see anyone through the blacked-out windows. My heart was pounding. The light turned green and the SUV drove off in another direction. Back at home, we hosted our game night with two other couples. One couple was Alan and Jules, who always told stories of their latest wine-tasting weekends. They were incredibly superficial, but that's why we liked them. And then there was Brad and his devoted wife, Kara, who weren't drinking tonight. They were going through their third IVF cycle. My wife chose the adult game Bad Choices, which was ironic as it's designed to find out your darkest secrets. I somehow managed to keep my composure during the game. Everyone enjoyed the questions, giving silly answers. Alice was the life and soul of the party. How can she act so sociable after what she's done? Did I even know her? It was my turn, and I decided this was the perfect opportunity to slip in my own question. Would you ever hire a hitman to kill your significant other? My aim was to get Alice to confess in front of everyone. As I was about to ask my question, Alice stood up.
Would anyone like more wine?
Jules quipped.
Do you have a 1920 bull?
Alan looked at Alice.
He's such a bitch.
Everyone laughed. Alice went into the kitchen, and Brad joined her.
I'll help you pour.
A few minutes later, they arrived back, and Brad is drinking a glass of wine. Kara looked down and sipped her water. I took a deep sigh and asked a question on the card. Have you ever looked through your spouse's phone? Everyone put their hands up. After the couples finally left, I waited for my wife to go to bed. I went back on the dark web forum. I still wasn't convinced my wife ordered the hit. What if it was just a fantasy? That would be disturbing, but at least my life wouldn't be in danger. I scrolled through the rest of the forum and saw dozens of spouses ordering hits. At what point did their love go rotten? I reread my wife's chilling conversation with the hitman. There was no doubt she had ordered my death. It was like I was nothing more than a bug waiting to be zapped. I violently hurled into my wastepaper bin. I wiped the vomit from my mouth and reached for my cell to call the cops. I couldn't make the call. Even though my wife despised me, I couldn't bear for her to spend the rest of her life behind bars. Okay, there must be another way. Maybe I could get the hitman to call it off. I set up a new profile and messaged the hitman asking to meet. I stared at the screen, awaiting a response. I had no idea how long it takes hitmen to reply. A few minutes later, a message appeared from the hitman.
Why?
I quickly typed, I need you to take special care of my wife. Yes, I know I'm incriminating myself, but it was the only way to get the hitman to meet with me. The hitman responded.
How much do you want to pay?
I responded immediately. Whatever it takes. Name your price. The hitman replied with a meeting time and place. My heart pounded as I closed the laptop, realizing the gravity of my next steps. I was about to meet the man hired to kill me, and now I would try to convince him to cancel the job. At the docks, in the dead of night, I could hear the water lapping against the boats as I waited. The area was deserted, lit only by the faint glow of the moon. Out of the shadows, the hitman emerged, walking towards me with an eerie calmness.
You're late.
His voice was ice cold. I struggled to keep my composure. I need you to call off the hit.
Even though she wants you dead.
I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of that statement. It was painful to accept, but even if she wanted me dead, I couldn't go through with this. Yes, even though she wants me dead.
There's a slight problem. Someone else paid me more.
A wave of dread washed over me as he reached into his coat.
You were okay when I broke your wife's deal.
We had a deal. I can pay you more. The hitman paused, seeming to consider my desperation. I'll pay anything.
24 hours. I'll throw in the guy for free.
No one dies? The hitman lowered his gun slightly, looking at me with a calculating expression. What's his name?
Speak to your loving wife.
I watched him walk away, leaving me alone in the darkness, feeling more hopeless than ever. Back at home, I desperately tried to find ways to pay the hitman. My life depended on it. I attempted to take out large loans with several banks, but they refused to lend me the money. Was there anything I could sell? I had a collection of watches, but that wouldn't come close. I even resorted to putting my kidney up for auction on the dark web, but the offers were either too low or too weird. A nervous wreck, I sat my wife down on the couch and looked into her eyes. I was about to find out the truth. Why did she order a hitman to kill me? But before I could speak, Alice burst into floods of tears.
I've been seeing someone.
I stared at her in disbelief. Somehow this betrayal felt worse than the hitman. Who is it?
Brad.
How long?
A few months. We met at this shady bar by the docks.
At that exact moment, I realized I had been extorted. My wife never placed a hit on me. She'd never even been on the dark web. The hitman was a con artist who witnessed my wife's shady encounter with Brad. By eavesdropping, he gathered enough info to set up a fake hit. He even used our cat's name, Gus, as my wife's username.
Can you forgive me?
I had a deep pit in my stomach. She may have had an affair, but I hired a hitman to kill her. We'll get through this. We exchanged a tight hug. Our lives slowly got back to normal. My wife will never know what I did, but I still have to live with it every day. I searched the dark web for him to retrieve the money stolen by the hitman, but his username and messages were deleted. I even ventured back to Seals, but he was long gone. It was like he never existed. I could never go to the cops. I would get a life sentence for what I've done. There is one good thing that the hitman gave us. Our marriage is no longer stale. In the end, some secrets are better left buried. But as I look at her each day, I wonder how long until this truth digs itself back up.